sleep. So figuring out what are a few things that you can be doing to help you to be able to get that relaxation that triggers your body and says, oh, these are my sleep triggers. I have a lot of new parents and grandparents that when they're watching kiddos and then they wake up with the baby monitor or whatever, and then they're amped up, oh, okay, everything's okay. How do I fall back to sleep? So that's where it's, turning the monitor around so you can still hear, but the light isn't shining on you. And then going through that same going to sleep process again resets the brain to realize now it's time to sleep again. Mm-hmm. And that is, maybe this would be a good time to mention, I know we have the Sleep Well guide here. Mm-hmm. All of your listeners will be getting access to the Sleep Well guide. It's 16 different key points and strategies, like the sleep window that we were talking about. There's links to getting things like PMR for kiddo sleep and all these different steps and strategies that they'll be able to get access to as well.
Perfect. So I think you probably hit a lot of this stuff, but what are some key myths, things that are out there that, people think helps you sleep? Obviously, I hit the one because it's personal, the TV. But I know there's other ones. You've talked about screens and electronics, but what else is there around sleep and myths?
So let's talk about the snooze button for a minute.
There you go.
So here's the thing. Snooze sleep is not helpful, useful sleep. And here's what I mean by that. And we have a lot of people, and I get it. It feels really good to say no to something. And how many people now schedule that in to their wake up? They set their alarm earlier so they can hit the snooze button. You have people hitting the snooze button 4, 5, 6 times. But here's the thing. So we talked about all the stages of sleep and how our sleep works. We fall asleep, our body temperature starts to drop. We have different chemicals that are being produced. Well, about 2 to 3 hours before we wake up, our body starts the wake up process. So it starts to raise our body temperature. It starts to produce different chemicals. That's actually why so many people wake up around 3 or 4 in the morning, because the typical sleeper, if you're waking up around 6 or 7, well, 3 to 4 is about 3 hours beforehand. That's when the body is starting to raise your temperature, and that's when we're starting to see cortisol being produced. And so people are sensitive to it. They look at the clock, their brain gets amped up, and then now they're awake. But so what happens is that whole process is going on. Now you're ready to hit the snooze button. Well, you've just negated the last 2 to 3 hours of work that your body did and said, just kidding. I didn't mean for you to wake up yet.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is, one, it can actually take up to 60 minutes for your brain to then fully wake up after we're hitting the snooze button and we're disrupting that whole process. Also, what's interesting is that snooze sleep, because it's only about 8 or 9 minutes, that's not enough time to really get back into the restorative stages of sleep. So now you're hovering in that light sleep, like empty calories. I'd rather have people, I'd rather have people set the alarm for 15, 20 minutes later. And then that's why it's good to set your phone further across the room. So when the alarm goes off, you have to get out of bed to turn it off. And it's less easy to then hit the snooze button or stay in bed and then doze back off again. So the snooze button is a really interesting myth that comes up. Interesting. I think another one we talked about, that everybody needs 8 hours. Some need more, some need less. I think it's important to note that also a lot of people have tried to convince themselves that, well, sleep is something that is a nice to have, not a need to have. So it is important to note what all the things that sleep has such importance for. It's important for our physical bodies. So as we talked for the gentleman in the room, when you're getting an hour on average less sleep at night, it can age men by about 11 years in testosterone. So the 59-year-old is functioning as a 70-year-old, and so on and so forth. We know that our workouts stop working for us. So that you can actually see in some cases where muscle is getting used before fat, and the body is actually holding on to the fat to fuel the exercise. And so it's harder to lose weight because we need those energy sources. It's really important for our brain health. So when we're sleeping, our brain takes out the trash. That's where we're going to see that all of the toxins that build up to contribute to Alzheimer's and such get flushed out of the system. Our memory, our attention, our focus, even how we respond to challenges. That's why we see disruptions after daylight savings the next few days, where we see increases in heart attacks and car accidents just because of 1 hour on one night. So there's all these different impacts for immune, metabolism. I think it's just important for people to realize that we can't train ourselves to need less sleep, and that sleep isn't this mediocre commodity that we should be getting rid of, but it's actually a superpower that we can all harness if we start reprioritizing it.
And finally, we'd like to thank Amundi Pioneer for sponsoring this podcast and our time with Dr. Milanak.